Dear viewer, dear students, colleague teachers, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this presentation on History and Government, KCSE 2022, Analysis of Section B. With you, Mr. Ogada, a teacher of History and Government at Alliance High School, presenting on this wonderful platform of the top-notch educational TV programs that you can easily trace and watch from our YouTube channel on top-notch TV programs. And therefore, I've been presenting KCSE 2022 revision on both paper 1 and paper 2. And I have done a presentation all the way from paper 1, the entire paper. Then I went to paper 2. I looked at section A in 2 different segments, section B, which I also divided into 2 different segments. So in my previous presentation on section B, I tackled question 18 and question 19. Now I want to present to you section B, part 2, analysis of KCSE 2022, paper 2, history and government. We begin by looking at question number 20. So question number 20, part A, highlight 5 factors which promoted the growth of nationalism in Ghana. Highlight 5 factors which promoted the growth of nationalism in Ghana. This is drawn from the topic number 6 from 3 work, the rise of African nationalism. I remember when I was revising section A, I already mentioned about the 3 countries that we discuss in this topic. We have Ghana, Mozambique, and South Africa. And I gave why each of these countries. You can be able to retrace that from our online YouTube channel that is on Top Notch, so that you can be able to see what did Mwalimu say, why these 3 countries are brought forward to be taught in our syllabus to our students. So we have the topic, the question asking on factors which promoted the growth of nationalism in Ghana. 1, discontent of African farmers with low profits from cocoa. So the African farmers were not happy because the conditions that they were subjected to when they were growing their cocoa. Remember, cocoa is the main cash crop in Ghana. The condition the Africans were subjected to as they were undertaking this agricultural production were not that conducive. And therefore, the production was of low quality. And this, of course, ended up affecting even their sales in the market. Then they accrued only small amounts of profits. Therefore, the African farmers were not happy. Therefore, they staged the revolution and gave some certain conditions to the British, bringing up nationalistic feelings among the African people. Then discrimination against Africans in issuance of trade license. Africans were discriminated. The Europeans, the British felt insecure, having competition from the African farmers, and therefore they were discriminated, and even getting trading licenses was a problem. That also brewed a lot of, nationalistic feelings among the Africans. Number 3, existence of a large group of youth with elementary education. The educated elites or the educated elites also played a critical role because they are the ones who moved around to mobilize, to sensitize the African population on their rights and their need to rise and, fight against this exploitation by the Europeans. And this was mainly done by the large group of youths that had attained elementary education. 4th point, presence of World War II ex-servicemen who came up with new discoveries or ideas. These individuals that had participated in the World Wars, first, they demystified the European superiority myth. It was believed that the European man or human being could not die, even if they were shot. But when they went to the battlefield, These people died like any other human being. They bled like any other human being. They got scared and ran away like any other human being. And therefore, when they discovered such, then they came back home and said, you people, we have to rise and fight against these people because they are not immortals. They are also mortals like any other human being or any other living creature. So the experience of the World War II ex-servicemen, those that had come from the war, they came and inspired nationalism in Africans and in Ghana, of course, and told them we have to rise and, fight for our rights. Then existence of highly educated Africans that were trained in Europe or in USA. Education plays the role of enlightenment, where you are enlightened about your rights, political rights, social rights, economic rights. And therefore, these many educated Africans, they use such opportunities to, educate or sensitize or mobilize the Africans on their rights to fight against the Europeans. Then Africans were forced by the British to cut down their cocoa trees due to the swollen shoot disease. They were forced to cut down their cocoa trees due to swollen shoot disease. This agitated or grieved or angered the African farmers, because how could they be told to cut down those trees that they had spent so much money, investing, planting, doing farm work, and then all of a sudden you are told, cut down all that. Of course, you'll be very, very disappointed. Then low African representation in the LegCo. The Africans were not given a forum where they could easily articulate their grievances, such as the Legislative Council. So that also inspired the spirit of nationalism. Then the Ghanaians were against the construction of a university in Ibadan instead of Accra. Again, this was a point of discontent among the Africans, and they fiercely arose to defend that. Number 9, they feared possible land alienation. In every deliberation or discussion where we are talking about African liberation from the white man, at the center of it was the issue of land, where these people came, took away fertile, arable African lands and, left Africans in squatter farms, lands that could not even help them, generate productive agricultural products from these farms. So they feared possible land alienation from the British. Therefore, they said we are going to fight for our rights. Then granting of independence to India. Granting of independence to India and Pakistan inspired them. India and Pakistan attained their independence. These are countries from the Asian world. They attained their independence in 1947. It gave an inspiration to many, many countries of the world that were under European colonization. So when the Ghanaians saw that India and Pakistan had attained their independence, then they said, this thing is possible. Therefore, we can be able to fight. You can be able to fight and push on that we may also be liberated from the white man's yoke or white man's slavery and bondage to the Africans. We had Pan-African movements inspiring them to struggle for independence. These were movements that brought together African people of African origin or descent, drawn from different parts of the country in the world. Remember, they are the leading Pan-Africanist in their country, Kwame Nkrumah, that was also later to become the first president of the independent Ghana as a republic. So these Pan-African movements inspired many, many Africans to keep on struggling for their independence. Introduction of taxation was resented by the Ghanaians, where these people introduced different and exploitative taxes on the people. exploitative taxes on the people, and the people said, no, 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 we have to stand on our feet and defend such exploitations to be done against us. Then loss of power by traditional chiefs created discontent against colonial government. Loss of power. The traditional chiefs were regarded as illiterate by these British officials. Then they came and replaced them with their puppet chiefs. Puppet chiefs. Therefore, the traditional chiefs lost their positions. Therefore, at the end of the day, the chiefs that had been replaced were quite disappointed and quite discontented with the colonial government, and therefore they played a role in, mobilizing the people to fight against the British officials or the British government. Then next point, the UN Charter inspired Ghanaians to struggle for independence. The UN Charter that was drawn to protect human rights, to provide freedom and liberty to the people, to treat human beings without any form of discrimination. This charter guaranteed protection of human rights, and therefore it inspired the Ghanaians to struggle for independence. Remember, this charter was drawn after the end of World War II, where the United Nations body was formed to replace the League of Nations to ensure that human rights were protected. Then the charismatic leadership provided by Kwame Nkrumah, their first president, and others united the people. Kwame Nkrumah and leading African nationalists in Ghana also inspired the people to fight. They desired to achieve total independence. They wanted to be totally liberated from the white man's yoke. Also gave them that opportunity to push on. Lastly, we talk about the unemployed youth. The unemployed youth. Most governments are rocked with the challenge of creating employment to the unemployed. A majority of these are normally the youth. And therefore, with the many unemployed youth, they really felt that it was time to rise and fight, that they would be granted their independence, and the government that would elect at the end of the day would take a leading role in creating employment opportunities for these people. So the unemployed youth were at the forefront to fight for the liberation of Ghana from the British. Good. We now go to part B. Question number 20, part B. Explain 5 methods which were used by African nationalists in the struggle for independence. Explain 5 methods which were used by African nationalists in the struggle for independence. 1, they used strikes. Again, this from the topic African nationalism. The topic African nationalism. So, 1, they used strikes, boycotts, or go-slows, or demonstrations so as to express their discontent with colonial rule. You can be able to consult your dictionary and see what is a strike, what is a boycott. You refuse to go to work, go slow. Things you try to paralyze. Demonstrations, you go to the streets just to express their discontent with the colonial rule. Number 2, they sent petitions, delegations, or memoranda to present their grievances to the colonial office or to the colonial government. Delegations to present their grievances. They used mass media to mobilize people or articulate African grievances. Mass media is a very powerful platform where people can use it as a way of reaching out to the masses. So most African countries that were fighting for their liberation used mass media. Then they sought representation in the Legislative Council where they advanced African interest. They sought representation in the Legislative Council. These are the legcos. The parliament gave them an opportunity where they could debate and discuss issues that were affecting the Africans. Then they formed independent movements, schools, and churches which were used as platforms to advance the African agenda. These independent movements, like the churches and the schools, were devoid of any influence from the Western civilization. So they used these to, mobilize their people, to value their cultures, to value their, their ways of life, to value the heritage that they shared as Africans, and to fight against any attempts to have, someone interfering, or someone interfering with how they were doing their things as Africans. Then they used armed struggle to dislodge or remove the oppressive colonial government. We've mentioned an example of Mozambique. Mozambique is a classic example of a country that used the violent means to fight for their liberation. Even Kenya, we have the Mau Mau wing that, brought forth the use of armed struggle to remove the oppressive colonial government. Then they formed political parties which provided avenues for pushing for independence. They formed political parties which provided avenues for pushing for independence. Political parties like in Ghana, we had the Convention, not Convection, Convention People's Party. In Mozambique, we had a party called Frelimo. In South Africa, we had the African National Congress, ANC, and many, many political parties that you can talk about in different countries in Africa. Then they formed trade unions which championed the rights of workers. Trade unions that were to, fight for better working conditions or better living conditions of workers. They used diplomacy or conferences to rally international community behind their African cause. For example, a country that used diplomacy was Ghana. Ghana, peaceful means of fighting for their liberation. Those conferences were very, very important. They held public rallies to articulate their grievances to the colonial government. This is a common point, people holding rallies, to talk about the issues that are affecting them. Then some of their arrested or detained nationalists went on hunger strikes. Some of the arrested or detained nationalists went on hunger strikes as a means of pushing for their voices to be heard. So that brings us to the end of number 20 of Section B, Paper 2, KCSE 2022, History and Government Revision. Now we go to question number 21 as we close on Section B. Question 21A talks about give 5 disadvantages of using animal transport. Give 5 disadvantages of using animal transport. Drawn from the topic transport, topic 2, form 2 work. 1, animal transport, their use is limited. Disadvantage number 1, their use is limited to short distance. They get tired easily. That is self-explained. Number 2, animal transport is a slow means of transport. That is also well explained. Of course, you cannot move with such a high speed when you're using the animal to transport your goods. Then their use is limited to certain areas. Their use is limited to certain areas. Like where we have, sesefly prone areas, you cannot use animal transport effectively in such areas. Therefore, that's just an example. Some animals are stubborn, and especially when they're tired. The donkey gets tired, it's grounded, it cannot move. Pack animals can be attacked by wild animals. Any animal that is used for transport is called pack animals, like the donkeys, the oxen, the horses, the camels. Those are pack animals. They are prone to be attacked by wild animals. Then they have a limited carrying capacity, cannot carry huge loads of goods or commodities from one place to another. Their use is also limited to daytime. Most of these animals are not nocturnal. They cannot operate in the dark or at night, so therefore their use is limited to daytime. Then animals fall sick or they get attacked by diseases. Animals fall sick or they get attacked by diseases. Then it is tedious or cumbersome mode of transport. Animal transport is a tedious and cumbersome mode of transport. Question 21B. Explain 5 ways in which television is important as a means of communication. Explain 5 ways in which television is important as a means of communication. 1. This from the topic communication anyway. Answer number 1 on ways in which the TV is important. 1, it creates jobs or employment opportunities such as broadcasters, the sound engineers, sign language interpreters. Yeah, good employment opportunities for different people that venture in the line of communication. Then it brings out reality in the news by displaying images or giving sounds. Like even this one now, you're able to interact with me one-on-one. I speak to you as as you see me bringing about reality. Then it promotes trade or commercial activities through advertisements of goods or services. We've seen in our TV programs as maybe there's an interruption of advertisement of different commodities. That is promoting trade. It enables people to get real-time news as one can watch events as they happen or as they occur in different parts of the world. Real-time news. As it happens, it is getting streamed to you live to wherever you are. It promotes entertainment industry whereby artists get job opportunities to display their talents or drama or music. So the TV as a channel also promotes the entertainment industry. Then it promotes education by disseminating knowledge through various educational programs or channels. A good example is the top-notch TV programs that we are now dispensing to you wherever you are. Therefore, as we educate you, good people, it also informs on what we are discussing, that the TV is an important education channel. Then it promotes culture through airing programs showing cultural activities of diverse communities. Yes, during national public holidays, we have those beautiful traditional presentations from different communities in our republic, that ends up enhancing cultural activities. Then it broadcasts news or ideas which keep people informed about global or local affairs, broadcasting news. So therefore, you can see that those are the many advantages of having the TV or television as a source of information on history and government. So dear students, dear viewers, colleague teachers, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, this has been Mr. Ogada, a teacher of history and government at Alliance High School, coming to you with direct revision from KCSE History and Government 2022. And I've just presented Section B, Part 2, marking the end of this presentation on Section B. I believe you cannot afford to walk out, so that we are able now to catch up with the final bit of this paper in Section C, which I will present in one part. I'll present question 22, 23, and 24 as one part. Then we call it the end of our analysis of KCSE, History and Government, both Paper 1 and Paper 2. Keep watching our programs. Tune in to top-notch TV programs. Thank you. God bless you. Stay tuned.